What are you doing?" A large man's voice echoed in the bright light. Who was it? "Ah, Mr. Kuroki," Hosoda-san said. The light on my face fell to the floor, and I was freed of its brightness. But my eyes still hurt. "Oh, it's you, Hosoda. What are you doing here so late?" "Sorry." So it was a teacher. Judging by the atmosphere, Hosoda knew who he was. Unfortunately, I didn't know any teacher named Kuroki. After all, our school was rather large. There were lots of teachers I didn't know. The teacher he called Mr. Kuroki was holding a flashlight, which meant he was probably the teacher on duty for the day. So that meant it was already late enough for the teacher on duty to be doing his rounds. "And who are you?" He turned the light to my face once more. I narrowed my eyes at the brightness. "Ah, yeah. My name is Kurata." Mr. Kuroki slowly approached us. "You kids, you know you're not allowed to be in here, right? What exactly are you doing here?" Then he compared the two of us. Hosoda-san looked at me weakly. So I was going to have to be the one to take responsibility, huh? Maybe I should be the one to explain everything. Explain the situation. Well, I'm writing an article about the 7 school mysteries of this school. So I'm gathering stories from everyone. Even though I knew we shouldn't be here, we came to check out the stories of Hanako-san in this building. I lowered my head in apology. Of course, it made sense that he'd be angry. Mr. Kuroki took another step closer. "Ah, so you're in the newspaper club. I heard that they were writing an article about the 7 school mysteries," he said, and placed a hand on my shoulder. A large hand, like a glove. Looking closer, he seemed pretty muscular. Maybe he was the PE teacher. Well, as a teacher, I'm not really a fan of education being nothing but study. Throwing your everything into club activities is noble as well. But there are limits. You know that you shouldn't be in this building because it's dangerous, right? It's old and falling apart. The floor is rotting and your foot might go through it. You're going to be in trouble if you have an accident, you know. Don't ever do something like this again, all right? Having said that, the teacher lightly clenched his fist and faked a punch towards my face. "That goes for all of you." He turned and looked at everyone in turn. Thank God it was an understanding teacher. I made the right choice by telling him the truth. "So, I'll let you off just this once. To tell you the truth, I don't hate scary stories myself." He shone the light beneath his chin, lighting up his face, and then grinned at us. "How about it? Want to hang with me for a bit?" For a moment, I didn't understand what he was saying. "Hang with you? Do you mean that you'll come and check Hanako-san with us?" Hosoda-san said. The teacher smiled happily. "No. Stories of Hanako-san are just groundless rumors. But I know an even scarier story about this old school. How about it? Would you like to join me?" He smiled, just like a mischievous child. What an easygoing teacher. I didn't even imagine that I might get a story from a teacher. Honestly, the fact that the seventh person never showed up was starting to worry me. What should I do? Should I join him? Listen to his story. Is that okay, sir? It was like a wish come true for me. His smile grew even larger. Yeah, I'll let you off this time. Don't worry about it. But I want you to promise me one thing. What? Don't tell anyone that you were here with me. They'll get mad at me. He smiled self-consciously. Mr. Kuroki seemed like a good guy. We gave a large nod. All right then. Well, follow me. All we had to rely on was the single dim torchlight. Mr. Kuroki took the lead, shining the light by his feet as he walked. Then he slowly began to tell us his story as we all walked. Do you kids know about the war? No, we don't. Things were pretty bad here during the war. I wasn't born then, so of course I don't know the full details. But I also went to this school when I was a kid. When I was a student here, we still used this building for classes. There was a certain story that was popular at the time. Here we are. Having said that, the teacher stopped. Then he turned his light towards a wall. Looks just like it used to. He froze the light on the wall, then ran his hand down it fondly. Can you tell that the color of just this wall is different to the others? Then he shook the light a bit. Now that he mentioned it, it did seem to be a slightly different color to the others. Then he slowly started speaking. Did you know that this building was once destroyed during the war? It's been more than 50 years since then. Although it was a little nicer when I came here. Now it's about to be destroyed again. To tell you the truth, there's something on the other side of this wall. It was walled in after the fact. What do you think used to be there? Stairs. That's right. There are stairs on the other side of this wall. They lead down to the basement. The rest of this school building is made of wood, but just those stairs and the basement below are made of stone. That's because it's an air raid shelter. At the time, this school acted as an evacuation shelter. When they received warnings of air raids, the locals would all gather here. They went down the stairs on the other side of this wall, cramped into the dim, dark basement, and trembled together, waiting for the raid to end. Even just 5 minutes felt like days. Bombs fell like hailstones, and even if they covered their ears, the noise was so loud that it was like their eardrums were about to burst. As the thunderous roars echoed, they could clearly feel the shaking through the stone walls, and each time they prepared themselves for death. Then they cried, praying not to die. When the air raid sirens ended, and the storm of explosions had calmed down, they realized they had survived and sighed in relief. That air raid shelter is on the other side of this wall. But it was a simple thing, built for a pinch. It was just to ease their minds. The guys who built it knew from the start that if a bomb fell on it, it would be destroyed in an instant. Then one day, the thing that should have never happened, happened. A bomb hit the school. The air raid shelter was buried. Even if they were wearing their protective hoods, those would do no good against being buried alive. They were all pinned beneath a mountain of debris. Numerous people died, both soldiers and civilians alike. No, more truthfully, they weren't dead. They were buried alive. They cried for help beneath the debris. They screamed, but it was barely above a whisper. Their throats crushed. When they tried to speak, all they spat out was blood. "Mama, it hurts. Help me. Help me." Numerous bitter voices piled on top of each other in an unnerving chorus. They couldn't help them. Everyone was doing their best to stay alive. They didn't have time to help those who clearly had no chance of survival. When they finally dug up the buried shelter, the bodies were already decomposing. And there were no supplies at the time. It wasn't easy to get new lumber. So they decided to leave the shelter as it was and only repair the half-destroyed school building. Of course, it was a time when no one could speak of ghosts or grudges or anything like that. Even now, those dead bodies are said to still be buried in the remains of the shelter. And when I say the school was restored, they mostly just put things back up from where they'd fallen. And then they built a wall to cover where the air raid shelter had been. There are all sorts of stories like this about the old school that you haven't heard of yet. They're knocking it down soon, right? When they do, unthinkable things will probably escape. To be honest, I have a story to tell you about something I experienced with this wall when I was a high school student. Do you want to hear it? No, that's enough. No, that's enough. I shook my head. Kurata-san? I've already heard plenty of stories today. I don't want to hear any more. What I've heard already is enough to turn into the seventh story. Plus, for some reason, my heart is beating wildly. It feels like if I stay here any longer, something bad will happen. Mr. Kuroki seemed let down. Really? Well, sure. Okay. But the real good story starts here, you know. It didn't matter what he said. I'd heard enough. He shrugged his shoulders. Well, go home then. Be careful on your way out. Okay. Thank you. I lowered my head. Hosoda-san seemed upset and disappointed, but he said nothing. This was how it should be. Gripping my bag, I put the school behind me. Besides, it was pretty late. When I glanced at a clock on my way back, I saw it was already nearly 9 p.m. When I got home, I ran over what happened during the day in my head. They sure were some scary stories. Well, I didn't really get Kazama-san's story, but I'd just have to deal with that one. I'd have to ask Hino-senpai the following day why he invited Kazama-san. I was pretty nervous in the end, but it was an interesting experience. Then, suddenly, the phone rang. Who could it be at this time? I looked at the clock, and it was already past 10. What should I do? Should I answer it? answer the phone. I picked up the receiver. Hello, this is Kurata. Ah, Kurata-san, it's me. Huh? It was an awfully familiar voice. Who on earth was it? No way, you've forgotten about me already, but we were just hanging out together. Ah, Hosoda-san. So you do remember me. I'm glad. To tell you the truth, there's something I'd like to talk to you about. Do you have the time? Sure. Thanks. I thought you'd hear me out. Do you remember Mr. Kuroki's story from before? Yes. Ever since I got home, I can't stop thinking about that wall. Like, I wonder if there's really an air raid shelter on the other side. Did he really go to all the trouble of calling me just to say that? And how does he know my number anyway? I never told him it. Hello? Hello? What's wrong? Are you listening? Yeah. And so, I was wondering, although it's kinda hard to ask, but how about it? Would you like to come and see what's on the other side of that wall with me? Now? What on earth was he saying? It would be 11 p.m. soon, and he wanted to go back to school? What should I do? How should I answer him? Okay, let's go. Okay, let's go. If I tried to refuse him, Hosoda-san would probably just keep asking anyway. With nothing else I could say, I answered him. Thank you, Kurata-san. I thought you'd agree with me. Well then, I'll be waiting by the school gate in an hour. See you then. Hey, hang on. When he was done saying what he wanted, he quickly hung up the phone. Damn it. I sighed and put the receiver back. I was such a soft touch. How could I agree to go to school at this late hour? And on a day like today, no less. Were my nerves numb? Normally, I'd be far too scared. Or did all the scary stories I'd heard drive me mad? I pondered such thoughts as I made my way towards school. I didn't intend to be late, but Hosoda-san was already waiting by the school gate. Kurata-san! The moment he saw me, Hosoda-san smiled and ran over. A large bag was slung over his shoulder. What on earth was in it? Well then, let's go to the old school building. Then, let's find out what's on the other side of that wall. His eyes sparkled. I couldn't understand why he was so fixated on it. We made our way towards the old school. Mr. Kuroki had to have been asleep by now. The old school building was creepy late at night, like a demon lived inside it. Hosoda-san was well prepared with a torch. It shone dimly on the wall. It was definitely somewhere around here. Ah, here it is. The color of the wall certainly was different. This was probably it. All right. Hosoda-san dropped his large, heavy-looking bag to the floor. Judging by the sound the floor made, it was pretty heavy. When he opened the zipper, I saw something large and metallic. Hosoda-san, is that... I unconsciously screamed. Hosoda-san smiled happily and took it out. Ooh, my father's hobby is carpentry. I borrowed his electric saw. My mouth hung open. Did he really intend to cut through the wall with that? What should I do? Stop him. Hosoda-san, please stop. He flung me aside with incredible strength. What are you doing? We're about to uncover an amazing secret. I can feel it. I can feel it. A powerful grudge swirls behind it. For a long time now, only bad things have ever happened at this school. There are evil spirits. They're sleeping behind this wall. Hosoda-san. I couldn't stop him. He grinned in the light of the torch, his eyes bloodshot. He turned the electric saw on, and the motor roared like a woman's shriek. He hoisted it into the air and thrust it into the wall without hesitation. The wall easily crumbled beneath the piercing sound. It showed no resistance, revealing its insides. It was too dark to see. Hosoda-san swung the saw around recklessly, making the hole in the wall bigger. Gah! Suddenly he went flying. He let go of the electric saw he'd given life to, and it bounced on the floor, vibrating around. Hosoda-san! I quickly picked up the torch and shone it on his face. Gah! I fell back on my backside. Hosoda-san's face was burnt so badly that I could hardly tell who he was, and steam rose gently into the air. It was like he'd been hit by a flamethrower up close. Were these the flames of hell? I didn't see any flames. But Hosoda-san was still alive. His flesh melted and blood dripped from his burnt and torn veins. Then he tried to scoop that blood back up with his half-hidden burnt hands, the bones showing through. But the hands that had opened that hole in the wall were unable to scoop up the blood, and it ended in vain. What on earth have you done? A voice echoed behind us. I turned around, and Mr. Kuroki was there. He stared at the hole in the wall with a fierce look in his eyes. Sir? I tried to call out, but he didn't seem to hear me. The soldiers are coming. Their corpses are coming to teach you foolish modern children a lesson. He wouldn't look at either of us. Then he slowly moved towards the electric saw and picked it up as it spun. Then he brandished it above his head. Die! He turned towards me. Mr. Kuroki? I tried to scream, but it only came out a whisper. Having decided to attack me, he raised the saw. Did I look like a dead soldier to him? The hole the saw had cut in the wall gaped just like a demon's mouth. Just what was inside it? Was it really an air raid shelter? But I was unable to check. The sharp teeth preyed upon me, and a few short seconds later, I was done for. The spirits of several soldiers floated in the air behind the disheveled teacher. Or did they? I touched something I shouldn't have. A world not meant for humans to know. The sharp teeth that had cut through my flesh and into my bones came down upon my head.